Hey, what's up guys? I'm Dustin with Rocky Mountain ATV EMC, and today I'll be showing you how to rebuild and replace the fork seals on a KYB PSF Air Fork. Alright, so today I'll be showing you how to rebuild and replace the fork seals on a KYB PSF Air Fork. Now be sure to double check with your service manual so that you know the exact suspension that you have on your bike. Now this fork has been removed from a 2014 Honda CRF 450R. Honda in the last few years has come out with several different types of front suspension for the Hondas. So 08 to, previous models, they had the twin chamber fork. From 2009 to 2012, they came out with a different variation of the twin chamber. 13 to 14, they came out with the PSF, which is the pneumatic spring fork. And then years 15 and 16, they came out with the PSF2, which we'll probably cover it later in another video. And then in 17, Honda just went back to the traditional style of the twin chamber fork. So this is the fork that we've got here. It's off the 2014 bike. Awesome. Now we can move on to some tools. So we have our Tusk fork cap wrench, which is absolutely necessary to do the service. Then we've got our Tusk fork seals, which can be found on our website. Next we have our Tusk digital air pump. This will be used to set the suspension's air pressure to spec. Also, we've got our suspension fluid, ratio right to measure how much fluid we're going to put back into the forks, drain pan to collect all of it, and some basic set of tools. So we've got our driver, a socket, a box open end wrench, flathead screwdriver, a pick, and then of course we have our fork seal driver itself. Without the fork seal driver, it's pretty much impossible to perform the service. So make sure you have a set of these. All right, looks like we've covered everything. So let's go ahead, let's get into these forks and get those seals replaced. All right, first, once we get the forks removed from the bike, we're gonna make note of the suspension settings. So on our compression adjuster, we're gonna go ahead and seat it and count the number of clicks until it seats. Once we've gone ahead and let that seat, we're going to back it all of the way out. It's not actually going to come out, but we'll turn it counterclockwise until it stops turning. And we're going to be doing the same with the rebound adjuster that's at the base of the fork. So that's 14 out from full seat, and then we've got 10 out from full seat at the base. So now we need to get the fork cap itself loosened and removed. We're going to be using our vise that has our soft jaws in it, so we're going to go ahead and mount this in there. Now when you mount this into the vise, you want to place it at the base of where the triple trees would normally grab on the outer tube of the fork. So we're going to go ahead and set that in here. Okay, with that set, we're ready to get this fork cap loose. So now we're going to take our Tusk fork cap wrench and let's give this a turn. All right, that wasn't too bad. Okay, now that we've got that loose, the next thing we need to do is relieve the fork of the air pressure that's inside. So we'll remove our air valve cap, set that in a place where you're not going to lose it. Then we'll take our screwdriver, and now we're going to depress the Schrader valve. It might spit some fluid back out at you, so just be aware of that. All right, so now we've relieved the chamber of the air pressure. So now we can take our fork cap tool. Now that we've got this loose, we can go ahead and remove it. So this is attached to the inner damper rod assembly, so it's not actually going to come out. But what this is going to do is this will allow for us to remove the oil from the outer chamber. Okay, so just like so, we can bring this down, and then we can take and pour our oil into the drain pan. Okay, so now that we have the oil drained out, we can go ahead and temporarily install our fork cap. All right, so once we've got that seated, we're going to place it back into the vise, but this time we're going to clamp in the lower part of our axle holder. So we're going to clamp this in so that we can gain access to the lower cartridge bolt, which is going to be our rebound assembly basically. All right, so now we're going to take our driver with socket. We're going to remove this base bolt. Before we remove it, of course, we're going to need to break it free. So we'll break that free. Now before we take it all the way off, let's take our drain pan and we'll place that beneath it just in case we catch any residual oil that's going to come out of there. Okay, so once it reaches the end of its threads and it's backed out all the way, that's where we're going to need to stop. So once we've got that nice and loose, as you can see here, now we can go ahead and pull the rest of the assembly out. We'll lose a little bit of oil. So now we can take our boxed open end wrench. We're going to fix it to this piece on the damper rod. Then we're going to take our driver, our ratchet with a socket here, and then we're going to need to remove these two. So I like to hold this one in a fixed position and then use my socket to remove it from its locked position. All right, so now that we've got that loose, we can go ahead and pull it off. So now that we have the base bolt out, we can go ahead and remove this rod. So now that we've got that stuff removed, I'm just gonna go ahead and slide this down a little bit. I'm gonna set this on my table just so that it can still catch oil at the drain pan that's beneath. So let's pull the fork cap, and now this is going to allow us to pull out the damper rod assembly. So we're gonna pull this out like so, just like that. Set this down nice and gently. Okay, so now that we've got that out, we need to slide hammer the inner tube out from the outer tube. So in order to do that, we need to remove this dust seal. For that, we're going to use our flathead screwdriver. Go ahead and place this in between the seal and the outer tube. We'll just kind of turn the screwdriver a little bit just to kind of work that seal away. Now we can go ahead and pull the seal off. All right, next there will be a snap ring that resides on a ring landing inside of the outer tube. So this is basically what holds the oil seal into place and keeping it from blowing out of the bottom of the fork. So take our pick tool, and we need to get that removed. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of work that out of there. Looks like this one just decided to pop right out. So now that we've got the snap ring removed, we can go ahead and get this assembly apart. So we're going to do a slide hammer motion like this. All right, just like that. So now that we have the inner tube removed, we can begin to take off our guide bushings. On the guide bushing, there will be a butt end where it comes together, right? We're going to take our flathead screwdriver, we're going to place it inside, and then we'll turn the screwdriver like so. This will open it just enough so that we can slide it up off of our fork. All right. Then we have the next guide bushing that we can remove. Stopper ring. We've got our spacer, our oil seal, snap ring, and then the dust seal. So now that we have those components removed, we need to inspect this tube. So what I'm looking for when I'm inspecting this is any types of dings, nicks, or anything that has marred the finish on this inner tube. So what I'll do is I'll take my fingernail, I'll just kind of run it along the length of the tube. And this way, if there's anything that can catch my fingernail, it has the potential to compromise the oil seal. So I'll just kind of give this a good, nice inspection. So we're looking good. Doesn't look like there's any sort of nick, ding, or anything that has marred the finish on our tube. Now that we've got these parts all disassembled, we can go ahead and get these cleaned with some contact cleaner. We can inspect our inner fork tube. You want to look down the center of this into some light, see if you see any scratches or anything like that. Make sure it's nice and clean. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the damper rod assembly itself. I've got my soft vise here. I'm just going to lightly clamp it into place just to kind of hold it there. And I'll take my fork cap tool. I've got a 21mm wrench. And this is going to allow for me to remove the inner compression assembly. All right, just like that. And then we can remove the inner compression assembly. Once we've got that removed, we can take our drain pan and we are going to empty what's inside of this chamber into our drain pan. Then I like to go ahead and stroke the rebound shaft several times just to go ahead and get the remaining oil removed. All right, so now we are ready for the assembly process. So we've gone ahead and cleaned our suspension off. Now on the damper rod tube itself, what I like to do is take my rag, I'll spray the rag with the contact cleaner, and then I'll just clean this outer surface here. Now I don't want to get any contact cleaner on this section of the rod because there is a seal inside of here, and depending on which contact cleaner you're using, it's going to have a different chemical compound. So some of the chemicals will actually eat the seal itself, and then you've got to replace this whole assembly. So stay away from cleaning this area. So we're going to start with our damper rod. We'll place it into our vice's soft jaws. Now for this particular bike, the service manual recommends that we use 12 fluid ounces of suspension fluid. So for these, we're going to be using a 5-weight. Be sure to check your service manual for fluid capacities and types. Okay, we've got our 12 ounces there. Now we can start pouring this into the damper rod. Okay, I'm going to leave just a little bit out because we need to work some of the air bubbles out of the damper rod. So I'm going to take this out of the vise just so you can see this. And what you need to do is slide the damper rod shaft up and down. So basically you're moving it through its stroke. Inside of here you've got the piston, which has the shim stack and valving, and sometimes you get air bubbles. Well, you do get air bubbles behind there, so we need to work those air bubbles out. Okay, I'm going to add the remainder of my fluid. We've worked out some of the air bubbles. Once we've added the remainder of our suspension fluid, we can go ahead and compress and rebound the damper rod shaft. Again, this process will allow for the air bubbles that are inside of here to be expelled. All right, so now that we've got the damper rod mounted into our vise, we can go ahead and take our compression assembly, and we're going to just gently slide this in. Now, before you slide this in, it's always good to coat your O-rings with a little bit of suspension fluid. Just that way, it just kind of helps the lubrication process on assembly. So we'll go ahead and gently mount this inside, just kind of work it in there. Okay. So now I've got that lightly seated. While it's in the vise, I'm going to go ahead and take my wrench and I'm going to seat the compression assembly. Okay, got that seated on there. Now, to further finish the rebuild process of the damper rod, we are going to take and compress the damper rod shaft. And what it's going to do is it's going to purge out whatever oil the system doesn't need. And then we're just going to go ahead and set the damper rod assembly aside. So we'll just lay this here, then we can grab our inner fork tube. Now before we go sliding everything on, first we'll start with our dust seal, then our snap ring, and then our oil seal. So in order to do that, we need to slide it onto the inner tube here. Now you'll notice we have the landing in which one of the guide bushings will reside. So there's some sharp edges right there. We want to make sure that we don't compromise our seal when we install it. So there's a couple ways to get around that. If you use OEM seals or some of the other aftermarket brands of seals, they usually come in a bag. You can slide that bag over the top of this, lube it up with some suspension oil, and then you can work your seal into place. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use some regular old electrical tape here. And what I'll do is I'll take and fill in the guide bushing's ring landing so that it kind of is the same height as the rest of the outer tube, if that makes sense. That way it's just kind of less work for me, and I know that the oil seal is going to go on safely. So once I've got that inner ring landing, I'm going to go ahead and cover the outer or the lower edge that's right here. And I'm going to work my way up to the top edge. And lastly, I'm going to stretch the tape over the very top of the inner tube. So we're going to go ahead and reuse the dust seals. I've gone ahead and cleaned these up. They're in good shape still. And then our snap ring. Now I'm going to take some suspension oil and coat the inner diameter of our oil seal. So if you take a look at the sides of the seal, this side is going to have a deep recess in it. That's going to allow oil to seat inside of there. And then under compression, it will actually tighten the seal so you get a better seal. Now the other side, you can see some stamping marks, maybe some numbers on there, and that just kind of lets you know that that's going to face towards the tire side of the fork. So now that we've got this lubed up with some suspension oil, we can go ahead and get this installed on our inner tube. Now when we place this onto the inner tube, I like to set it on there ever so gently at a bit of a slight angle. So then I'll kind of push on this side of the seal, and then I can bring the other side down into place. And this just kind of helps reassure me that we're not going to be catching any sharp edges. So I'll work it from side to side. I'll press on this side, pull this side down, then I'll press on the opposite side, pull this side down. Now that we've got those obstacles cleared, we can slide this into position. Next will be followed by the collar, then the washer ring. Okay, next will be the guide bushing. Before we install that, let's go ahead and get the tape removed. Slide our guide bushing into place. Next we can install our slider bushing. I like to take my flathead screwdriver, place it into the gap, spread it apart, and slide into place. Next we can take our outer tube. We're going to slide this into place. Do so nice and gently like. Next we'll be driving our oil seal. So we'll go ahead and set this part of the assembly up into the outer tube. I'm going to bring down the oil seal. Okay, so now it's temporarily seated inside of there. Now we can take our fork seal driver, and then we can begin to drive our fork seal into place. Notice you heard that change in pitch. That let me know that our seal assembly has been properly seated, so we don't need to drive the seal in any farther. All right, so now that we've got the seal driven, we can go ahead and drop our snap ring into place. It's always good to take a pick tool, make sure the snap ring seats into the ring landing, and when it does, if it seats correctly, you'll hear a click. Looks like we're in good shape. All right, so now that we've got our snap ring seated, we can begin to seat our dust seal. So I like to just let it sit at the base of the inner tube. Go ahead and apply just a little bit of a fork tube oil just to kind of lube it up a little, and then we can smash it together like so. It doesn't have to be too hard, just enough to get the dust seal to seat inside the outer tube. Next, we can move on to installing our damper rod inside of the inner and outer fork tubes. So I'm just going to take and place this inside nice and gently. Remember, there is no spring on this, so I'm going to temporarily thread the fork cap on. With that threaded on, we can go ahead and install the rod that will sit inside of the damper assembly. We're going to take this lock nut right here and back this out and just kind of lightly seat it, so that'll be counterclockwise when facing the assembly there. We're going to double check our clicker adjuster, make sure that's rebounded. Then we can install this until you feel it seat. We don't want to crank it onto the shaft, we just want it to seat and stop, just like that. So once we have it in that position, now we can have our lock nut greet the center bolt. Now we can get to applying some torque to it. Now check your service manual for the specific torque for your machine. With that set, we can go ahead and slide this assembly up and begin to thread this into place. Now that we've got that assembly inside, we can remove our fork tube. We're going to remove our cap and add the remaining amount of oil that's specified for the outer tube. Okay, so that's going to slide up out of our way. So we'll hold the inner damper rod assembly up. Now we can add the oil. Once we've got our oil in there, hold the damper rod assembly up, slide the outer tube to meet the fork cap, and we're going to thread this into place. Use our Tusk fork cap tool, and be sure to reference your service manual for your machine's proper torque specs. So now we can take our Tusk digital air pump, and we're going to get the forks set to pressure. So now that we've got that set to 35 psi, we can go ahead and remove the fitting from the fork tube. Never use an air compressor. An air compressor is going to deliver too much air too fast, and you're going to destroy your suspension. Maybe not destroy it, but definitely blow out those seals we just replaced. And don't forget to set your compression and rebound settings back to where they were. So on our compression assembly, we were at 14 clicks out from full seat. So we're going to go ahead and seat this fully. Okay, then we'll back it out. 14 clicks. Okay, and that should place us back to our settings on top. Next, we can do the same with our rebound adjustment. We'll go ahead and set it full seat. Okay, from full seat, we can back it out to about 10 clicks out. All right, and that's it. That's how we replace the fork seals on our 2014 Honda CRF 450R. It can get a little messy, but with the right tools from Rocky Mountain ATV MC, you can definitely get the job done yourself. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more how-to videos, product spotlights, and tests. As well, don't forget to check out our website at RockyMountainATVMC.com. We've got a huge selection of parts, apparel, and accessories for your ATV, UTV, and motorcycle. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and keep turning those wrenches.